Well, hi everyone. I've got another update for you today on the partial bridge collapse that occurred on April 24th, 2026 in Cranston, Rhode Island. It was a highway bridge ramp where about a 100-foot section of the concrete parapet wall and the attached metal electrical shielding wall came crashing down onto the active Amtrak tracks. I'm recording this video on April 29th, 2026. I want to go more into the technical aspects of what I think happened and the technical things that I believe RiDOT and other government officials should be addressing with the public, and so far they haven't, in my opinion. So as I mentioned before, this is the Route 10 North ramp going to I-95 North in Cranston, Rhode Island. This is an aerial shot. We're talking about the south side of the bridge where this entire wall came crashing down. This is a Google Street View of this ramp as we're going on to the north. And the wall that fell off the bridge is going to be located on the left-hand side of these photos. So we've got this concrete parapet wall, a steel guardrail. There's another railing, steel railing on the top of the parapet wall. And then you've got this flat metal barrier wall that extends above the parapet wall for protection from the electrical lines that power the Amtrak locomotives that run on the lines down below. This is a picture of a standard parapet wall. This is from Pennsylvania. I show it to give you a better idea of what this wall would look like behind the guardrail and below this shielding wall. This is the back side of one of these shielding walls as it attaches to the outside of the parapet wall. So I think Acting DOT Director Bob Bracchio has provided some statements that don't make a lot of sense to me in this episode. He's indicating that it's somehow the barrier wall that caused the problem. Clearly, it looks like it's the parapet wall that became detached from the bridge deck and brought everything down with it. From the prior inspection reports, this is from the most recent inspection done in March of 2025. You can see evidence of prior collisions with vehicles against this wall here. So obviously this cantilever wall has to be designed to withstand wind loading on this flat metal barrier wall surface, as well as potential impacts from vehicles hitting the side of the guardrail and the parapet wall. Now, to me, it looks like there's two potential modes of failure here of this cantilevered parapet wall, and that is sliding along the base or overturning from the top. And if you look at these photos in the immediate aftermath of this collapse, it's a very smooth surface. And I had wondered at the time whether there was any pre-demolition saw cutting activity to create such a relatively clean surface. And I wish RiDOT officials would state whether that parapet wall was actually doweled or had reinforcing steel connecting it to the bridge deck, because I don't understand how it could break away so cleanly. Now, some of you reached out to me and indicated that in the late 50s, early 60s, it was common to construct these parapet walls after the bridge deck concrete had cured. So you would have what's called a cold joint there and no actual physical connection between the two surfaces, you just have resistance from friction. It seems implausible to me that Amtrak would ask RiDOT to have these barriers installed, which would increase the weight on the parapet wall and also increase the wind loading, perhaps significantly. Somehow that loading would be expected to be resisted solely from the self-weight of that parapet wall system. And this appears to be the base of that parapet wall. You can see a line of rusty steel, but I can't imagine all of that steel breaking out flush with the base of the parapet wall. It just doesn't make any sense. So this photo suggests to me that there wasn't a connection from the parapet wall into the bridge deck. But again, that just seems really shocking to me if that's the case. But you can't dispute the fact that that's a very clean and relatively smooth surface that was exposed after the parapet wall fell off and took the barrier wall with it down to the Amtrak lines below. Now, some of you had mentioned in the comments to my previous videos that you wondered if that big snow event in February resulted in snow being plowed and pushed up against the parapet wall and this barrier wall. And I think it's an interesting suggestion, although if that were to occur, that would suggest that there may have been some displacement or distress to the wall that was there for nearly 2 months before this wall actually failed, or perhaps longer. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea that I don't have any evidence to support that at this point. Now, my most recent video, my thumbnail title indicates, let the cover up begin. And I'm just going to play you some of these news segments from WPRI. And I'll walk you through them here as we go.
Both men say their priorities lie in reopening the ramp and securing the other bridges. Neither could provide a theory on how the barrier fell Friday or who should be held accountable.
Yeah, we'll take a look at all the issues that relate directly to whose responsibility it is, but that investigation's in the process and ongoing.
We don't know the cause of it. I can't speculate on the cause of why this happened, but we're looking into it, and there's plenty of time to do that.
Okay, so they're not going to speculate. They say they're going to do an investigation. They don't give you a timeline for when they expect to complete such an investigation. There's no strong commitment on what form or when they'll actually share that information with the public. It just seems to me like they're slow walking any commitment for transparency relative to what happened here. And as I mentioned, it's a miracle that no one was injured or worse with this debris falling on the track. I mean, these trains can't stop on a dime, and it's completely plausible that this wall could have fallen directly on top of a passing train. I mean, look how fast these trains go through here. Okay, I'm going to play this next segment here where, again, they indicate that they're going to apply some type of retrofit to the other 7 bridges that have this same configuration of the parapet wall with the attached Amtrak electrical barrier wall.
Meanwhile, work is underway on 7 additional bridges with the same safety barriers. RiDOT says they are inspecting those with plans to add reinforcements.
We're not taking any chances. We're just going to remove all doubt, and we're going to brace them.
So how do they know what they need to do to improve the stability of these parapet walls on these other bridges with this barrier wall attached? I mean, you just don't go out and blindly say, well, let's just do this or do that. It makes no sense. So as I've indicated, I think they have a clear idea of what happened here. They at least have a working theory, and they have to in order to know what they need to do for the similarly constructed bridges. So clearly they're not sharing what their idea is about what caused this wall failure. RiDOT Director Bob Rocchio goes on to describe what they're actually doing to stabilize the walls on these other bridges, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Similar to like when you have a bookshelf on a wall, you have that triangle, bracing underneath. So we're going to put like that triangle bracing, that bookshelf type bracing underneath the parapets.
Okay, well, I'm not sure why he would brace underneath the parapet wall. I'd like to see a detail actually of what they're doing. So RiDOT, please, through your spokespeople or your spokesperson, Charles St. Martin or others, post a detail as to what you're actually doing to stabilize these other walls. And while you're at it, please post a detail of how this parapet wall was attached to the existing bridge deck in this instance of the wall failure, and show if there actually is such an attachment. Now here's a standard detail of a typical parapet wall that would be constructed today. And so on this side here on the left is the parapet wall. You can see continuous reinforcing that loops over the interior of the wall down into the underlying bridge deck. So I'm curious, was there a similar type connection for this parapet wall to the existing bridge deck? And if so, what caused it to fail? So I've got one more video segment that I want to play for you from this news story, and I think it illustrates, in my view, the root cause problem for these infrastructure projects in the state of Rhode Island. Namely, you have politicians who try and sound like engineers, and you have engineers that sound just like politicians.
Both men emphasize the work being done are precautionary measures.
In an abundance of caution, the governor ordered, he wants to put everybody at ease, and he wants to make sure that everybody knows that we absolutely secured those bridges.
So why is this process being directed by the governor? He's not an engineer. Let the engineers tell the governor what needs to be done and let the governor back that up. It was appropriate. I'll continue to follow this story. I've got several pending APRA requests. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time for RiDOT to fulfill these APRA requests if they actually do. The normal course of things, in my experience, is you make the records request, then they've got several days before they get back with you and typically say, we're going to take more time before we get back with you. And then they say, well, now it's going to take so many hours to fulfill that request, so send us money. So again, I appreciate all of you who have contributed to buy me a coffee. Those funds go to supporting these public records requests. So if you're so inclined, there's a link in the description to this video. I also want to thank the channel members and those of you who've contributed to Super Thanks, additional ways to support this channel. So I'll continue to follow this story. I've got an email request for information into Amtrak. I think that's what it's going to take to divulge what actually happened in this instance. I'm not altogether confident at all that RiDOT officials or other Rhode Island state officials will essentially divulge what happened here in a timely fashion. I will say I think Bob Rocchio is a much better, much more credible spokesperson than his predecessor, Director Alviti, but I have been disappointed in the lack of candor and directness from Mr. Rocchio in this Cranston wall collapse incident. So I think he could do a lot better there. He's an engineer. I would encourage him to speak like an engineer and leave the politics and the political spin to others. That's my 2 cents on that. So thanks very much, everyone.